"Can you
Hi,
pretend to be
Daddy.
my dad, just until Mommy comes back?" asked the little girl to the rancher. Red Hollow, Wyoming Territory, December 1884. Red Hollow lay silent beneath heavy snow, its doors barred against the biting wind. The streets were empty, save for a few flickering lamps fighting to stay lit. Outside the Hollow Hearth Diner, where warmth and chatter hummed behind fogged windows, a small girl curled on the wooden step. Lottie, 4 years old, thin dress, stiff with frost, hugged a worn, one-eyed stuffed bear to her chest. Her lips were pale, her feet bare and cracked, little streaks of blood marking where the cold had bitten too deep. She leaned sideways against the doorframe, trembling, her breath coming in soft clouds. Inside, people laughed over bowls of stew. The sound pressed against the glass, warm and unreachable. Lottie lifted her head just enough to peer through the window. She mouthed something, maybe "Mama," but no one inside saw her. The door opened suddenly. A man stepped out, paused when he spotted her, then shut the door sharply as if cold or pity might follow him out. Lottie didn't cry. She only pulled her bear closer and rocked faintly, whispering to it as the wind swallowed her small voice. Footsteps approached, uneven, dragging. A drunk man stumbled toward her, coat hanging open, breath thick with whiskey. He leaned down, squinting. Well, what do we have here?" he slurred. "Little one like you shouldn't be sittin' out in this cold." She shrank back, clutching the bear tighter. "Where's your mama?" he asked, reaching toward her arm. "Let's go find her, huh? I can help." His tone was wrong. His eyes were wrong. When he grabbed her, she let out a tiny, frightened whimper. "I said I can help," he snapped. "You ain't stayin' here. Take your hand off the girl." The voice sliced clean, through the wind. The drunk man stiffened. Lottie looked up. A tall cowboy stood a few yards away, snow dusting his broad shoulders and hat brim. A rifle hung across his back. His black horse snorted, stamping at the cold ground. The man's face was half-shadowed, but his stance was steady, dangerous, unshaken by the storm. The drunk scowled. "Who the hell are you?" "That wasn't a suggestion," the cowboy replied, stepping closer. Something in his tone, quiet, lethal, made the drunk retreat. He let go of Lottie's arm and backed away, muttering, disappearing down the alley with his bottle clinking against his coat. The stranger waited until the man vanished, then knelt in the snow beside the girl. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if not to frighten her further. He pulled off his gloves, revealing scarred but gentle hands. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't speak. He softened his voice. "What are you doing out here, little one?" Her lips trembled. "Waiting. For who?" "My mama," she said. "She said she'd come back." His brows drew together. "Where is she now?" "I do not know." Lottie blinked, tears freezing before they could fall. "She said to sit here and wait. She was getting bread, but she took too long." He looked toward the endless white road. The trail was covered, no recent tracks, no sign of a woman returning. He lowered himself further so they were eye level. "How long have you been waiting?" She lifted her fingers, counting slowly. 3 days, I think." His breath caught. 3 days. A child alone, in snow that could kill a grown man. He looked toward the diner. Not one soul had helped her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lottie." He nodded. "I'm Jack." She stared up at him, eyes red, hopeful, tired beyond her years. Snow fell between them in soft, breaking flakes. Then, voice barely more than a breath, she whispered, "Can you pretend to be my daddy, just until my mommy comes back?" Jack Callahan had ridden through war without fear. He had buried a wife and an unborn daughter without breaking. But those 12 trembling words from a freezing child struck him harder than any bullet ever had. He swallowed, a knot tightening in his throat. "Yes, Lottie," he said quietly, "I can." Red Hollow, the Callahan Ranch, late evening. The snow had not eased. If anything, it roared louder, as though the wind itself were furious. Jack Callahan pulled his coat tighter around the small bundle in his arms as his stallion trotted through the drifts. Lottie sat in front of him in the saddle, wrapped in his duster, her face buried against his chest. His cabin was 3 miles out of town, tucked behind a line of frost-bitten cottonwoods. Most would have missed the narrow trail entirely. Jack rode it by memory, guiding the horse one slow step at a time. When they finally reached the porch, Jack swung down first, then lifted Lottie gently. She was half asleep, lips blue, arms limp. He opened the door with his boot and carried her inside. The cabin was plain, log walls, single cot, stone fireplace. Everything inside was cold to the touch. Jack laid her on the cot and moved quickly, stacking kindling, striking a match, feeding flames until heat began to pulse through the stone. He poured water into an iron kettle, set it on the hearth, then found a tin of oats and the last of his canned milk. Within minutes, the scent of warm porridge and wood smoke filled the room. When the girl stirred, he was kneeling beside her, holding a chipped mug. "Drink this," he said softly. "It'll warm you." She sat up slowly, using one hand to hold the blanket around her. Her eyes met his, tired, but trusting. "What is it?" she asked. "Warm milk." She drank in slow sips. Jack watched her, studying the tiny fingers, clutching the mug, the way her shoulders relaxed with each swallow. "What's your name again?" he asked. "Lottie," she whispered. "Just Lottie?" She nodded. "That's what Mama calls me." Jack leaned back against the wall. "Do you remember what your mama said before she left?" Lottie looked down at her bear. "She said to sit on the step, that she would be right back. She was going to get bread." "Did she say where?" "She said the baker down the road, but she did not come back." Jack frowned. "How long were you sitting there before I found you?" Lottie lifted her shoulders slightly. "I do not know, but it was morning, then night, then morning again. 3 days, he thought. Alone, in the cold, and no one did a damn thing." He rose, pulled another blanket from the trunk, at the foot of the bed, and tucked it around her. Then he moved toward the table, where her small bundle of belongings lay. Inside a cloth pouch, there was only the bear, and a small square of linen, a woman's handkerchief, delicate, but worn. He unfolded it carefully. In the corner, stitched in fading blue thread, were 2 initials, C.W. Jack stared at it for a long time before folding it and sliding it into his coat pocket. Behind him, the fire cracked. Lottie's breathing slowed. He turned. She was curled in a ball beneath the blanket, the bear tucked beneath her chin, her thumb in her mouth, her lashes still wet from cold or tears. Then, her voice, faint and half-dreaming. "Mama, do not let the bad man take me." Jack's chest tightened. He sat in the old rocking chair by the fire, boots still wet, coat still on, staring into the flames. Once, long ago, he had waited in this very room for a midwife. His wife had been upstairs. There had been laughter in the rafters, hope on every beam, but by morning, the house had been silent. He never fixed the cradle. Now, years later, a child slept in his bed. Not his, not meant to be here, but here nonetheless. And she had called him Daddy. Even just pretend. He exhaled slowly and leaned his head back against the wall. Snow hissed softly against the windows. Tomorrow, he would find out who C.W. was. But tonight, he would keep the fire going. And the girls safe. The next morning, Jack left Lottie still sleeping and rode back into town alone. The snow had quieted, but the roads were thick with slush. The shops were open again, smoke curling from chimneys, boots scraping boardwalks, and life returning to Red Hollow like nothing had happened. He went first to the bakery. "No," said the baker, a squat man with flour on his beard. "Ain't seen a woman with a little girl. Not lately." "You sure it was my shop she was headed to?" "She told her daughter she was going for bread," Jack said. "Could have meant the general store." Jack tried there next. Then the post office. Then the stables. Each time, the answer was the same: no woman, no girl. He was turning back toward his horse when he passed the dressmaker's shop. Something made him stop. Inside, a gray-haired woman was folding bolts of fabric. She looked up, startled at first by the man in the doorway. "I ain't buying lace, if that is what you are wondering," Jack said. The woman gave a tired smile. "That much is clear. What can I help you with?" "I am looking for a woman, early 20s, brown hair, blue eyes, might have had a little girl with her, 4 years old. You seen anyone like that in the past week?" The dressmaker blinked, then nodded slowly. "I think so. Yes. Came in last Thursday. Wanted to trade a pair of gloves for some thick socks. Said she was headed for Wyoming. Looked scared. Kept looking over her shoulder." Jack stepped inside. "Did she have the girl with her?" "She did, when she came in. But when she left, she was alone. I asked about the child, and she said the girl was waiting for her. I thought that strange, but she looked too nervous to press." "Did she give a name?" "She signed the trade book. Walker. Caroline Walker." Jack's jaw clenched. "Anything else?" The woman hesitated. She was limping. One side of her face was bruised. I assumed she'd been hit. By the time he stepped out into the cold again, Jack's fists were clenched in his coat pockets. He mounted the stallion and rode slow, piecing it all together. Caroline Walker left her daughter with a promise she did not keep or could not. Fleeing something. Someone. A man who hit her. A man who might come looking. Back at the cabin, Lottie was awake and eating oatmeal. She smiled when she saw him. "You came back." "Of course I did." She held out her bear. "He missed you." Jack gave a tight smile and poured himself coffee. After a moment, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the handkerchief. He sat at the table and studied it again. It was softer now, from her holding it. The blue stitching at the corner. C.W. He unfolded it completely. A faint rustling caught his ear. Something inside. Tucked between the folds was a piece of paper, no larger than his palm. A note, written in pencil, the letters rushed and shaky. "If someone finds this, please, take care of my daughter. Her name is Charlotte Walker. I call her Lottie. I had no choice. I will come back for her. I swear it. But if I do not, tell her I loved her with everything I had. Please, please be kind to her. Caroline Walker." Jack read it twice. Then a third time. He looked over at Lottie, who was humming quietly to herself, spoon-tapping her bowl. Her eyes were so open, so trusting. He folded the note and slid it back into the cloth. He would not tell her yet, not until he knew what happened to Caroline. But in his chest, a weight shifted. He had not planned for this. He had only meant to get her out of the cold. But now, he was in it, all the way. He looked at her again and said, mostly to himself, "I will keep your girl safe, Caroline, no matter what." Then, more firmly, as if it were a vow to the flames in the hearth, "Even if you do not come back, she will not be hurt again, not while I am breathing." It was late afternoon when Caroline stumbled into Red Hollow, her steps dragging, her coat little more than shredded wool hanging from bruised shoulders. Her cheeks were hollow, one eye darkened with a fading bruise. Blood crusted along her lower lip, and her boots were soaked through from miles of walking. The townspeople stared, but said nothing. She went straight to the diner, breath hitching as she threw the door open. "Lottie!" she cried out, scanning every corner. A few heads turned, confused. A waitress stepped forward. "Miss, can I help you?" "My daughter, she was waiting here, on the steps, 4 years old, brown curls. Her name's Lottie." The woman's eyes softened. "You mean the little one that man took? That cowboy?" Caroline's body went rigid. "What man?" "Tall, quiet, been around these parts a while. He came in maybe a week ago, found the girl out front in the snow, took her with him. Folks said she looked near frozen. He did not say much, just wrapped her in his coat and left." Caroline swayed. "Took her?" "He saved her," the waitress said gently. "I think he meant well. He lives out east, on the Callahan ranch." Without another word, Caroline turned and ran. The sky had begun to darken by the time she reached the edge of the ranch. Her legs barely held her. Snow clung to her skirts. She climbed the hill on numb feet and saw smoke curling from the chimney. She crossed the yard, stumbled through the gate, and froze. There, in the middle of the snowy yard, was her daughter, dressed in a too-big wool coat, chasing a chicken through the powder. "Lottie?" Caroline's voice cracked, barely louder than the wind. The little girl stopped. She turned. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, both disbelieving. Then Lottie screamed, "Mommy!" and ran full tilt across the yard. Caroline fell to her knees, just in time to catch her. The child slammed into her, arms wrapping tight around her neck. "Mommy, you came back. You really came back." Caroline held her like a lifeline, tears streaming down her face, one hand clutching the back of Lottie's head, the other tangled in her coat. "I am sorry, baby," she sobbed. "I am so sorry. I thought I lost you forever." Lottie pulled back slightly. "You said you were getting bread. I waited. I know. I should not have left you. I was trying to keep you safe." Jack stood silently by the porch, watching them. He had heard the commotion and stepped out with his rifle, expecting trouble. Not this. Caroline looked up at him, her eyes filled with something between gratitude and fear. "You are him, aren't you?" she asked. "The one who took her?" Jack didn't flinch. "I found her. She was near frozen, sitting right there on the step. No coat, no shoes." Caroline nodded, swallowing hard. "I had no choice. He was coming for us. I had to lead him away. I thought I would be back in a day, maybe two." Jack said nothing. His eyes never left hers. "I wrote a note," she added, "in her handkerchief. I did not know what else to do." "She's safe," Jack said simply. "She's eaten, slept, laughed. You left her, but she is still here. I owe you everything." "You owe her," he replied. There was silence. Then Caroline stood, still holding Lottie's hand. "I need to take her," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to keep moving. He might still be out there." Lottie looked up. "No, Mama. I want to stay." Caroline blinked. "What?" "I want to stay with Daddy Jack, too." Caroline looked between the man and the child. "Sweetheart, he is not your real. He kept me warm. He made me soup. He scared away the bad man." Jack stepped down from the porch, slowly. "She is your daughter, ma'am. I won't stand in your way. But she is not just scared of that man. She is scared of losing someone again." Caroline dropped to her knees once more and kissed Lottie's forehead. "We will talk about it, baby. I promise." Lottie wrapped one arm around her mother, one arm around Jack's leg. "I do not want to choose," she whispered. "Can we all stay?" No one spoke. The snow fell in soft, unbroken silence around them. The days that followed were filled with unspoken tension. Caroline moved cautiously through the cabin, never straying far from Lottie, her eyes always flickering toward Jack with a guarded look. She cooked simple meals, kept the fire going, and said thank you when needed, but never more than that. Jack did not press. He kept his distance, spoke when spoken to, and spent most of his time in the barn or chopping wood. But at night, when Caroline watched him from the kitchen window, she saw how gently he brushed Lottie's hair, how patient he was when she refused to eat vegetables, and how softly he read aloud from an old, cracked copy of Aesop's Fables until the girl's lashes fell. Still, Caroline struggled to trust. Then, one evening, while brushing Lottie's curls by the fire, Jack spoke first. "She would have been 5 this winter," he said quietly. Caroline looked up. "Who?" "My daughter. Her name was Clara. My wife, Maria, was carrying her when the axle snapped on our wagon. They were headed to visit her sister. I was out hunting. By the time I got back, it was too late." "I'm sorry," Caroline whispered. He nodded. "That was 6 years ago. I have not said her name aloud since." She looked into the fire. "I was 15 when they told me I had to marry Russell. He was twice my age, ran whiskey from Missouri up through Cheyenne. Mean bastard, but he had money. My father owed him." Jack turned toward her. "He never loved me. Just wanted something to own. I thought Lottie might soften him, but it only made him worse. One night, I packed what I could and ran. With her? He asked. Caroline nodded. She was too. I did not know where to go. Just away, always away. Jack studied her a long moment, then said, "You did the right thing." The words caught in her chest. She blinked fast and looked away. Lottie, unaware of the pain circling above her, ran to Jack, holding a comb and a bundle of dried lavender. "Can you wash my hair like Mama used to?" Jack hesitated, then knelt beside the water basin. "All right, little bug, but I make no promises about not getting soap in your ear." Caroline watched, frozen in place, as Jack gently worked warm water through her daughter's tangled curls, humming an old soldier's lullaby while Lottie giggled. He dried her hair with his own shirt, then tucked lavender behind her ear. Later that week, the snow thickened again, the cold settled hard, and the wind howled. That night, Lottie's cheeks burned, her breathing turned shallow. She curled into herself and whimpered. "She's burning up," Caroline said, panicked, pressing the back of her hand to the girl's forehead. Jack was already moving, boiling water, ripping rags into strips. He soaked cloth after cloth and laid them across Lottie's chest, her wrists, her neck. "Come on, little one," he murmured. "You are strong. You are stubborn. Fight." Caroline stayed beside them for hours, but exhaustion overtook her. She fell asleep sitting upright in the chair by the fire. When she woke at dawn, the fever had broken. Lottie lay curled in Jack's lap, his arms wrapped protectively around her. He had not moved from the rocking chair. His eyes were closed, his jaw slack with sleep. The fire had died down, but the room was still warm from them. Caroline stood silently, her hand over her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. She crossed the room, knelt beside the chair, and whispered, "You didn't have to do this." Jack stirred, eyes opening halfway. "I wanted to." "Why?" He looked down at the sleeping girl, then at her. "For the girl, and for you." She could not speak. She only nodded, and in that moment her heart took its first deep breath in years. The days passed with an easy rhythm. Neither Jack nor Caroline dared speak aloud, as if naming it might break it. Lottie had stopped asking when her mother would leave, or when Jack would send them away. Instead, she'd started saying things like, "Mama, can I help with the biscuits?" Or, "Daddy, come see what I drew." She called them Mama and Daddy now, not just by accident, but like she meant it. Every time Jack heard it, it caught in his chest, like a thread pulling something broken back together. They weren't a real family, not by paper, not by law, but in that quiet little cabin beneath the melting snow, it sure felt like one. Until the day the man came. It was Gus again who brought the warning, breathless, eyes wide, barely pulling his horse to a stop before shouting, "He's back! The man from before. He's got papers, a real writ, Jack. He's at the sheriff's office now." Jack's gut clenched. He turned, and Caroline was already standing in the doorway. Her face had gone pale. "He found us again," she whispered. "He's going to take her." "Not if I breathe," Jack said. "But if he's got a writ, I don't care if he's got a Bible signed by the president. He's not taking either of you." Jack moved fast. Inside, he yanked open the hidden panel behind the hearth. "Same place. Both of you. Now." Lottie looked up at him, scared, but trusting. "Is it the bad man again?" Jack knelt. "It is, sweetheart, but he won't get past me." Caroline pressed a kiss to Lottie's forehead, then grabbed Jack's arm before he closed the panel. "Don't do anything reckless." He gave a grim smile. "Reckless is my specialty." He shut the panel. Then he moved. He didn't have time to lay traps, but he had fire, and he had instinct. Jack sprinted to the grain barn. He soaked a line of lamp oil from the door to a pile of burlap sacks near the back wall. Then he lit it. By the time Russell Walker and his hired guns arrived, smoke was already curling into the sky. "Callahan," Russell bellowed from horseback. "I've got the law on my side now. You've got 2 minutes to give her up." Jack stepped out from the trees. rifle resting casually against his shoulder. "I told you once, Walker, she's not yours." Russell held up a folded paper. "This says otherwise." "I don't answer to paper," Jack said. "I answer to what's right." With a snarl, Russell signaled his men. 2 of them charged toward the cabin. The 3rd rode for the barn. That's when the grain store exploded. A burst of flame roared up, catching the rider off guard and sending his horse screaming into the trees. Jack took his shot. 1 man down. The other 2 drew pistols, but the fire had spread, spooking the horses and filling the yard with smoke. Jack rolled behind a trough and fired again. Another outlaw cried out, dropped his gun. Russell dismounted and charged on foot, knife in hand. "You can't stop me. She's mine." Jack met him head on. They collided hard, fists and boots, and blood in the snow. Russell slashed, but Jack ducked and landed a brutal punch to the ribs. "She's not yours," Jack growled. "Not her. Not the girl." Russell snarled, lunged again, but Jack caught his wrist and slammed him into the frozen ground. The knife flew from his hand. Breathing hard, Jack stood over him. "If you ever come near them again," he said coldly, "I won't use my fists next time." Russell spat blood but didn't answer. Sirens echoed from town. The sheriff, late, or maybe reluctant. Jack didn't wait. He turned and ran, through smoke and ash and gunpowder, straight back to the cabin, back to the panel, back to the 2 people he'd give his life for, without hesitation. Back to the family that might not be real in the eyes of the law, but was real in every beat of his heart. The fire was long out, but the scent of smoke still clung to the walls. The barn was gone, the threat gone with it. Russell had fled town under the weight of a broken nose and public shame, nursing bruises more than just skin deep. The sheriff, though reluctant, took Jack's word and Gus's witness. Russell had brought violence, and violence met him. For a while, quiet returned. Jack rebuilt the barn. Caroline re-sewed the curtains. Lottie, blissfully unaware of how close she had come to being taken, played in the snow and whispered secrets to the chickens. But something had changed. It was not fear anymore that kept Caroline at Jack's side, nor guilt, nor obligation. It was longing. She watched him brush Lottie's hair by the fire, his hand moving slow and careful, as if he were handling something sacred. She heard the weight in his silence at dinner, not from discomfort, but peace. She felt it when their shoulders brushed while chopping wood, and neither of them moved away. One night, while Lottie slept and snow tapped the windows, Caroline sat beside Jack on the porch steps. "Do you remember," she asked softly, "the first thing my daughter said to you?" Jack nodded. "Can you pretend to be my daddy, just until my mommy comes back?" Caroline smiled faintly. "You did more than pretend." He looked at her then, his gaze steady, guarded. She drew a breath, voice trembling. "So, now I want to ask you something." Jack said nothing, but something in his face shifted, as if he already knew. "Jack," she whispered, "can we stop pretending too?" He turned to her fully now. "Lottie asked you to pretend to be her daddy, and you became one, not out of duty, out of love." She blinked, and her voice cracked. "So I guess I am asking, if we could stop surviving, if we could start being something real, a family, not just for Lottie, for all of us." A long silence followed. Then Jack reached into his coat pocket. From deep inside, wrapped in a square of flannel, he pulled a small ring, gold, plain, elegant, worn by time, but still whole. "My mother gave this to my father the day he left for war," he said. "Said he could lose a leg, an eye, or his mind, but not this." He unfolded the cloth slowly. "I've carried it since Maria died, could not make myself let go, until now." Caroline's eyes widened. "Are you saying—" He stood, offered his hand. "Come with me." They walked in silence down the moonlit trail toward the chapel at the edge of town. The doors were locked, but Jack knew where the old preacher hid the spare key. Inside, the chapel smelled of cedar and wax. He knelt there in the flickering light of a single lantern. "Caroline Walker," he said, voice thick but clear, "you asked me if we could be a family, I am asking if you will be my wife." Tears spilled freely now down her cheeks. She nodded before she could even speak. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Jack, I will." As he slid the ring onto her finger, Caroline smiled through the tears. "Looks like my daughter's the one who saw it coming before either of us." The chapel smelled of pine boughs and wood polish, its pews lined with townsfolk bundled in Sunday coats. Snow had fallen again that morning, a soft dusting like powdered sugar over the rooftops. But inside, warmth bloomed in every glance, every whisper, every hand held quietly in anticipation. Jack Callahan stood at the altar in his cleanest shirt, his old cavalry jacket pressed and mended. His boots were shined, his face freshly shaved. He looked, as Gus said with a slap to his back, like a man reborn. Caroline walked down the aisle on her own. No father at her side, no need. She held her head high, chin trembling just a little, her pale blue dress fluttering around her boots. The lace at the sleeves was borrowed, the brooch at her collar once belonged to Jack's mother. But the real showstopper was Lottie. She marched ahead of her mother, barefoot by insistence, in a white dress too big for her and a crown of winter flowers in her curls. In her tiny hands she held a wooden box, carved by Jack himself, that held the rings. She beamed at everyone like royalty. When she reached Jack, she whispered, "Ready, Daddy?" loud enough for the first two pews to hear. Laughter rippled through the room. "Yes, Bug," Jack whispered back. "Ready." The ceremony was simple, honest. No grand gesture, just hands joined, vows spoken low, a kiss that made Caroline press her forehead to his and whisper something no one else heard. Later, as the town gathered outside for pie and laughter, Caroline slipped away to the steps of the chapel, pulling out a folded scrap of paper. She wrote in slow, careful strokes, the wind tugging gently at her sleeves. "I once asked a stranger to pretend to be my daughter's father. He had no reason to say yes. He owed me nothing, and still he gave everything. He gave her safety. He gave her joy. He gave her back her childhood. He was supposed to be pretend, but he did the job so well. I wanted to be his wife for real. I am not afraid anymore, not of the past, not of the future, not of love. Because today I married the man who saved us both, and this time no one is pretending." Behind her, Jack stepped down and took her hand. "What are you writing, Mrs. Callahan?" he asked, lips brushing her hair. She smiled. "Just something for Lottie to read someday," she said, "so she knows how this really began." Jack kissed her temple and looked toward the girl, now twirling in the snow, arms out, laughter ringing like bells. No one in town questioned the union, not anymore, not after what they had all seen, not after how far these three had come. Some families were born, some were built, and some, like theirs, were chosen in the fire and forged to last. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the snow, the silence, the love that bloomed where there should have been none, then saddle up with us for more. Wild West Love Stories is where passion meets peril, where every heartbeat echoes across wide open plains. Subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable romances forged in fire, dust, and devotion. Tap that like button, leave us a comment, and share this journey with someone who believes in love that refuses to die. Because out here in the wild, the truest stories aren't always written in blood. Sometimes they're written in love.